Follow Famous and Gravy on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to Famous and Gravy early and ad-free now by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify.
This episode is sponsored by Saks. Ooh, do I have some news for all the fashion lovers out there. Saks Fifth Avenue has arrived on Amazon, bringing you an incredible selection of designer brands like Balmain, Stella McCartney, Erdem, Etro, Dolce & Gabbana, and Giambattista Valli, all at your fingertips. From women's and men's fashion to stunning handbags, shoes, beauty products, and accessories, Saks on Amazon is your new destination for luxury shopping. Looking for the perfect wedding guest outfit? Planning a vacation? Need to refresh your weekend wardrobe? Saks' expertly curated edits have got you covered. Experience the ease of shopping premier luxury brands through Amazon's seamless personalized platform. Get the Saks designer brands you love delivered just like that, new on Amazon.
Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
This is Famous and Gravy, biographies from a different point of view. To participate in our opening quiz, email us at hello@famousandgravy.com. Now, here's the quiz to reveal today's dead celebrity.
This person died 2023, age 79. He earned a law degree from Northwestern University in 1968 and started on a political career.
He was an old politician. Okay. You know what? I'm going to need more.
Richard Wallace?
Not Richard Wallace. Who's Richard Wallace?
Maybe I'm thinking of the guy from 60 Minutes.
Mike Wallace?
Mike Wallace. Mike Wallace.
Not Mike Wallace. In the 1980s, he won or shared multiple Emmy Awards for local news coverage.
This one's incredibly difficult. A local news guy who's a politician.
David Letterman.
Not David Letterman, who
he's alive.
As of this recording is still with us. In 1974, he was embroiled in a personal scandal after he was found to have written a check for prostitution services at a Kentucky massage parlor.
All I can think of is the preachers.
Falwell,
Jerry Falwell. No.
Who writes a check for okay. No clue. Truly no clue.
His syndicated daytime talk show began in 1991, and originally it was an issue-oriented program. By 1993, however, lead-ins like worshiping the Lord with snakes were turning up, and the shock value just kept going up.
Jerry Springer?
Wait, why did I want to say Jerry Springer? I know that's not true.
Today's dead celebrity is Jerry Springer.
You're kidding me!
Well, what I've learned over our quarter century of shows is that deep down, we are all alike. Some of us just dress better or had a better education. Deep down, we are all the same. We all want to be happy. We cry when we're hurt. We're angry when we've been mistreated. And to be liked, accepted, and respected, not to mention loved, is the greatest gift of all. There's never been a moment that I ever thought I was better than the people who appear on our stage. I'm not better, only lucky.
Welcome to Famous and Gravy. I'm Michael Osborne.
And I'm John Watts.
And on this show, we choose a famous figure who died in the 21st century, and we take a totally different approach to their biography. What didn't we know? What could we not see clearly? And what does a celebrity's life story teach us about ourselves? Today, Jerry Springer died 2023, age 79. Okay, so I've invited my friend John back on the show. John previously joined us for the Steve Irwin episode. He has no obvious credentials for a Jerry Springer episode, but then again, who does?
Who does?
John, you and I were talking about your favorite Famous and Gravy episode before this recording. I want you to share your answer with the listeners, because in a way, that's why I wanted you here.
I love the Margaret Thatcher episode. The Iron Lady.
There's like two people who've given this answer. All right. Why?
I think it's really interesting to hear about someone who has a kind of a gnarly reputation, who's died, to come on here and unpack that person's life and try to find some nuggets.
The complicated figures are a little bit more interesting, perhaps.
Exactly. The complexity of these people, I know that there's a glimmer. I have this indelible sense of hope that there's something in someone, even though it may be overshadowed by the darkness, that there's some good in there.
Indelible sense of hope. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if we can carry that energy into this conversation.
We'll do our very best with Mr. Springer.
There's a lot to be said here, but let's get right to it. Category 1, grading the first line of their obituary. Jerry Springer, who went from a somewhat outlandish political career to an almost indescribably outlandish broadcasting career with The Jerry Springer Show, which by the mid-1990s was setting a new standard for tawdriness on American television, turning the talk show format into an arena for shocking confessions, adultery-fueled screaming matches, and not infrequent fistfights, died on Thursday in suburban Chicago. He was 79.
That is a mouthful.
This may be the longest first line of an obit. This is 5 lines. My God. Why? Why is this a 5-line obituary?
Because you know this took effort, and they were like, you know what I'm going to go all in for? Jerry Springer.
Are they going? Well, okay, so initial reaction is I like that they're going for, it's a long and complicated story with Jerry Springer.
Exactly, yeah. There's a lot to assess. So they make that apparent in the first sentence.
They sure as heck do. What do you like about it? Let's start with that.
I think that it is, even though they use the word outlandish twice, I do like that they bring in his political career.
That obviously leaps out. I don't think most people know that.
I don't think so.
Isn't it kind of weird? This is a deviation from the norm for the New York Times. Most of the time, when they give you the first line of the obit, it's, you know this person for this thing.
Yes.
And this is one where they're saying, here's the thing you might not know them for. Now, I do think the good folks of Cincinnati, Ohio, might know that he has this. He was on the city council. He was the mayor. We'll get into this. So that much smaller audience knows him. But the people who know Jerry Springer, they might know he had a political career. They probably don't.
Yeah, usually they make me hungry for more in this first sentence.
Yeah, that didn't happen here.
And that's not how I felt with this. I felt full. I felt very full.
Let's get to the second half, because this is what you know him for. By the mid-1990s, was setting a new standard for tawdriness. Tawdriness is pretty...
I love that word. Come on, tawdriness. That's a great drag name. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Tawdriness.
Oh, that is good. Turning the talk show format into an arena for shocking confessions, sure. Adultery-fueled screaming matches, they're ratcheting up. And then this one kind of stumbled me. Not infrequent fistfights. Why the double negative? Is that better than frequent?
Yeah, I feel like they really were giving me some passive... double negative.
Yeah. Why is this so long?
Yeah. Why is it so wordy?
Do you have an answer to that?
I think there's a bit of a cheekiness to it to say like, it was really a mess, and that's sort of the tone I'm getting from not infrequent fistfights, almost like through the side of your mouth,
Yeah,
like
totally.
to the camera is what they're giving.
I agree with that. So I'm still stuck on why this is so frickin' long. I do think that if you want to take the meta approach, you could say it's long because it's a complicated story.
I don't think it's this complicated.
So should we docket points?
Oh, I've docked points.
Okay.
Yeah, adultery-fueled screaming matches is great.
That is great.
That's great. I mean, put that on a t-shirt.
Sure. I'll buy that t-shirt.
Yeah.
I'm here for the adultery-fueled
screaming matches. Fun to say.
It's hard to say that it's missing anything given how long it is.
Absolutely not.
It's just so long that it sort of distracts, right? That the problem is the second half is the more important half. the new standard of tawdriness, turning the talk show format into a new thing. That's kind of all we needed.
I don't think that it necessarily turned the talk show format into an arena of shocking confessions. That was already a precedent. They took it to the adultery-fueled screaming matches and not infrequent fistfights.
And Arena is actually pretty good.
Yeah. So I think they brought in the violence in the Jerry Springer show, but I think this was already, we had Sally Jesse, we had Jenny Jones already on the platter.
But not at this level.
No, they took it up another notch.
So I have my score.
I'm going to give it an 8.
I gave it an 8 too. Okay. That's exactly the number I had. And I'm docking it for length.
Yeah, just readability alone is bad. But yeah, I think they've covered it all. The show's over, folks. We don't need to talk anymore about it. It's all in this.
I think we're done here. The whole story's in here. Great words in here. If you just pluck them out, Arena, adultery-fueled, not infrequent, and almost indescribably outlandish.
Yeah, 8 out of 10 is, I think that's
a very generous score.
It's a good
and I think
score.
it's probably the right score, too.
It's a good score.
And I do like that they laid the groundwork for the conversation we're going to have. So, all right, let's get into the next category. Category 2, 5 things I love about you. Here, John and I will develop a list of 5 things that offer a different angle on who this person was and how they lived. I think, before we get into it, there are 3 things I'm hoping to accomplish in this episode. I think first, we do need to do the work of telling the Jerry Springer backstory because it's way more interesting than I think people realize. Second is I'm wondering if we can develop a theory as to why this man sold his soul, if you even sign off on that language that he sold his soul. And then I think that a third thing I want to do is see if there is a good faith argument to be had for what he did and what he represented. Is there space for forgiveness here? I think there does need to be some condemning. Probably.
Is there a Margaret Thatcher
is there a
glimmer of hope in this?
Yeah. Gosh, I don't want to oversell the Margaret Thatcher episode.
Everyone, solid gold. Look it up.
Really?
Yes.
All right.
I fell in love.
I appreciate these compliments.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to kick us off here. And thing number 1 I have is Mayor Before Mayhem. Here's the backstory that people may not know. So, first of all, it's worth saying he's a child of Holocaust survivors. He was born in a tunnel during the London bombing.
Mom and Dad, their families had been taken away. They didn't know where they were taken. So Mom and Dad were trying desperately for about 2 or 3 years to get out of Germany, but they couldn't get visas anyplace. And at the last moment, England, Great Britain, gave the visas to them. They were among the last 80-something people to get out of Germany. And a month later, once they came to London, a month later, my mother gave birth to my sister. So neither she or I would even be here had it not been for Great Britain letting my parents in.
He is very well educated, went to Tulane, and then he got a law degree from Northwestern, and he entered politics right after law school. He is very much a child of the 1960s, inspired by the youth movement, by Vietnam, and by civil rights, and so forth. He signs on to RFK's 1968 presidential campaign. RFK was, of course, assassinated. Jerry Springer was at the 1968 DNC convention in Chicago, the one that was a riot, right? He bore witness to a lot of violence.
I got a call late at night. I was in Ohio at the time it happened. It just seemed unbelievable, almost despairingly unbelievable. The John Kennedy assassination was shock like this could never happen in the world. With Bobby, it was, oh my God, they're really gunning us all down. There was just this despair. And after Bobby Kennedy was shot, many people just kind of dropped out, the young people. And that's why we had Richard Nixon elected president.
And I think that's actually kind of what I want to call out here. There's quite a bit of proximity to violence in his upbringing. I mean, childhood Holocaust survivors and DNC and seeing his heroes get gunned down in the 60s.
In the 60s, yeah.
This, for me, matters in terms of the theory of Jerry Springer because violence is going to come up again on the show. Here are the other bullet points to note in his story, that he was elected to Cincinnati City Council in 1971. He was busted in 1974 over a prostitution scandal. This one, you're making a face.
I just love that. Yeah, it was when you said it. In the Kentucky brothel,
the
first
Kentucky
of all,
brothel
kills me.
Yeah.
Those
crossing state lines for this.
Crossing state lines for a little tail. And then
Kentucky brothel is a funny term.
And then he pays by check.
Yeah, with his name on it, right?
With his name on it.
He's a city
and this
councilman.
is why America is hilarious.
And he's a married man at this point.
He's out there writing checks back in the day.
And he does a big mea culpa.
I held a press conference one day and said I'm resigning from council. And everyone says, why? What are you resigning for?
Yeah.
And I said that several years ago I had visited a prostitute. And I was getting these phone calls. So I didn't want to live my life being blackmailed. So I first resigned, and then I held a press conference saying why I resigned. And then everyone said, well, what did you resign for? The next election, I came in first because they thought I overreacted.
The voters want him back after his big public confession. I think that's interesting, right? Here's the pieces I'm trying to put together here with Mayor Before Mayhem. This is all pre-Jerry Springer show. One is that he's got some proximity to violence. And two is that he's also a sort of celebrity who's doing a public confession. And I think violence and public confession show up on the show. They're in his story a little bit. So he ended up serving as mayor of Cincinnati from 1977 to 1978. He runs for Ohio governor somewhere in there and eventually transitions to local TV news. He is a respectable journalist. He wins Emmys. And then he launches a political talk show in the late 80s. And then the Jerry Springer show in the first couple of years was legit journalism, or was meant to be, not an arena for adultery-laden.
It was a serious Donahue adjacent show.
Donahue adjacent is a good way of putting it.
Donahue adjacent was very we're bringing people on to talk about serious things. And
you had Jesse Jackson on. He had Oliver North on. I mean, he's trying to have a serious discussion, and the ratings are a joke, and he's about to get canceled. They hire this producer, and then the whole thing gets reformatted, and the Jerry Springer show is born. All right. The reason this is important, this guy really seemed to believe that he could affect positive change in the world. I really think he thought, I'm going to do good. I'm a good person.
Yeah.
And that's surprising. I'm not sure everybody has that association with Jerry Springer.
Yeah. I mean, his inaugural speech as a mayor, it was all about dreams. I mean, he's very much a product of the Kennedy generation, he's
a diehard liberal.
Diehard liberal,
which he remains for the rest of his life. I mean, he's active in Democratic politics.
And so there is a lot of idealism. Also, for whatever reason, to me, it sort of sets up maybe in his mind, and I'm punting here, but if he's forgiven for this check writing scandal. Kentucky brothel scandal.
Sure.
I think the thing is that most people it wasn't that he visited the brothel as much as he was dumb enough to write a check. That was the people's opinion of the time. And then they ended up forgiving him. And he sort of I get this idea that America doesn't give a shit.
Yeah. I totally.
About your moral proclivities.
And I guess this is the question. Did you know any of this before I asked you to sit in on this episode?
Nothing about this. I did know that he was mayor.
After a degree from Northwestern.
An impressive pedigree.
Totally.
Yeah, I did not know that about him. Yeah, he was built for politics.
Well, and that's the other thing, that the people who worked with him said he was next level. He was presidential level. He was governor level. He was destined for a certain kind of high office because he just had a way with people. He is persuasive and he's compelling, and people just like him.
He's so likable.
But that is surprising. Because we come to not like him later, I think, or some people come to not like him because of his effect on culture.
Right. But not him as an individual.
I don't know. I mean, that's kind of the question. I mean, do we separate Jerry Springer from the Jerry Springer show?
Right.
Jerry Springer tries to separate Jerry Springer from the Jerry Springer show, but I don't know you get off that easy.
I don't think he can get off that easy, but I do think I've always said whenever you hear interviews about him is that he's just so likable, even, people who worked with him.
We wouldn't be having this conversation were it not for the Jerry Springer show. However, if you excise that show from his life, you don't really see a whole lot of compromise.
He wasn't a jerk.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You would expect someone who hosted that show to also just be a total disaster on the side.
Exactly.
He had some moments, but nothing.
We'll get into those. Yeah.
Nothing insane.
Yeah.
That's surprising.
Yeah, and I guess that's why I love it. So thing number 1, Mayor Before Mayhem. All right, so what did you go for thing number 2?
Okay. I had a similar sort of vein, built for chaos, trained for order.
Yeah.
Just digging a little bit more deeply into what you said. His life was this contradiction he somehow made coherent for us. He was born in this 1944 in the middle of the bombing of the Raid of London. His Jewish parents had escaped Nazi Germany. He had this kind of unpredictability in his background, but he sought that order later in life with his law degree, worked as a political campaign, entered local government, with this idealism. And I think he believed so much in systems, in fairness, in rules in that period of his life. And there was this sense of him trying to regain order from this sort of chaotic.
I mean, is this why the show worked? Did you went back and watched some of the Jerry Springer show?
Yeah.
I mean, I want to share a little bit of my journey with this episode.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so we decided to do this, and I'm like, I should go back and watch it. Is it really as bad as I remember? And within 5 minutes, I'm like, oh my God, this is
It's worse than I remember.
It's worse.
What is going on with your husband?
I've been with this man for almost 3 years, and she's been with him 3 months. He's been with me almost the entire time he's been with her, and this backwoods whore is going home without him. Eyes, bitch! You're
Like, obviously a producer has sat with them and said, like, say this, but then say it like you're really angry. And, these are not actors. So it's just, it's so awful.
I mean, his autobiography is called Ringmaster. There is a circus element to it. And Jerry Springer, to your point, will say in interviews, I'm not judging these people. Do we believe that?
I mean, I can't imagine.
You're not judging?
I can't imagine him not judging, but that was the stance he took. So in that way, he was the ringleader of the circus. To me, he was sort of America's grandpa. The grandpa of the family will just sort of shake his head and be like, oh gosh, how this doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
But you kids go live your lives.
Yeah.
Sort
Good
of like, he's flabbergasted by the guests on the show, but never harsh unless they're being really cruel. But he certainly doesn't tame down his audience when they're being cruel to the guests. He's just shakes his head and be like, oh, I can't believe you just said that, but this is great TV.
I mean, okay, so there's a documentary that came out about the show. And I do feel like there are stories at the extreme that are like particularly vulgar or particularly off-putting, bestiality, incest, all that territory where you're just like, oh God. There's also sort of run-of-the-mill average Jerry Springer, right? There's like outlier Jerry Springer, and then there's average Jerry Springer.
There's some tawdriness.
There's some tawdriness. And the tawdriness, I have a little bit more tolerance for.
Oh, that's,
I don't know, do you?
Sure. I mean, at this point, we're so used to trash now.
Yeah.
That it doesn't even break the surface in terms of like tawdriness to me. Watching some of those other things, it's a lot of, for the queer community, and in the 90s, it was a lot of bringing on queer people, exploiting them. Like, oh, this gay person has a crush on,
This was a question I had for you. Is the show particularly offensive to the queer community?
I'd love to do a good account of how many times a queer person was brought on the show to be like, look at the queer person. Yes, I think it was. But what was interesting was he did receive backlash using a slur for transsexual women and changed it on the show, never used it again. So he was responsive to that and sensitive and apologized for using that slur.
When you say built for chaos, trained for order, I mean, is this your way of trying to find a way to pay a compliment?
No, I think my insight is really just to say that even in that chaos of the show, he brought this sense of order into that show where he never...
Is he holding a center? Is he holding some sacred ground in your mind?
I think bringing kind of that grandfather attitude and this energy to the show where he tried to actually... He was playing it really seriously. He wasn't necessarily going above and beyond out of this world like his guests or his audience.
This is a very generous interpretation.
I think he was trying...
I mean...
Listen, I'm telling you the truth.
No, I mean, I'm not sure I disagree with that.
Yeah, the guests, the audience brought the chaos, but did Jerry bring it? I don't know. He stayed calm.
No, but he's got the platform, and this is fundamentally exploitative, and he's complicit in that. And it's very hard to get around that.
It's hard to get around that, yeah. But to my point about bringing this sort of order to chaos, every show ended with the final thought. This is where he tried to make sense of whatever happened on that stage, which, good Lord, he tried to sort of bring back that sort of law school closing argument for humanity.
The sadness of a lost relationship is bad enough, but too often we add anger. I mean, how dare this person who so occupied my life and heart leave for somebody else? No, don't let this person continue to hurt you. Let it go. Find someone who will love you back. Then you can have the happiness you want and deserve. Till next time, take care of yourself and each other.
I actually want you to take thing number 3. What do you got?
Okay, great. I'm going to say goalpost on wheels.
Oh, Okay, say more.
Morality isn't fixed, right? So it drifts. What shocks one generation is background noise for the next, right?
Yeah.
So Jerry Springer didn't create these issues. He didn't invent the violence and issues that were on his show. He just made it undeniable. Cheating partners, paternity doubt, all of these family betrayals. He didn't just create spectacle. He put this out at 3 p.m. with the commercial breaks and asked, so what do you think, America?
Yeah. That's actually kind of an interesting point because, to go back to the point I was making a minute ago about him being a child of the 60s.
Right.
Like the 60s are in such response to a sort of moral certainty of the 50s, right? There's, the sort of Norman Rockwell nuclear family. And if he really does have those kinds of roots, the attitude that moral clarity on what is and is okay to put on daytime television, maybe is more up for debate for somebody who has seen that kind of evolution.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's really good, John.
I think that, And so in doing so, I don't think he corrupted public morality. He exposed how flimsy and performative it already was.
I got to sit with this one a little bit. I think you're actually making a really interesting point. That which we are calling trashy and distasteful or whatever word you want to use.
Tawdriness.
That it's still, in my mind, pretty tawdry, trashy stuff, even 20 years later. But in the moment, maybe there's a part of his mind that's saying, this isn't as bad as it's being perceived, that this is public backlash, but public backlash in the past has pushed boundaries, has, to use your words, moved the goalposts, and that's a case to consider.
Right. He put gasoline on those goalposts and moved and rocketed them forward.
No question.
By doing this, his background gives it. It makes sense to me.
You can see that idea in his head.
You can see that idea in his head to say, like, hey, why not push norms?
Maybe this is overblown. Maybe a generation from now, they won't look at this as trash.
Maybe we shouldn't be clutching our pearls so much.
Indeed.
At these real people.
I think it's worth considering. If one of the things I said at the top of the episode is that I kind of want to make a good faith argument, that honestly segues pretty well into my thing number 4. Guilty pleasure. I want to talk about the word guilty pleasure. What does guilty pleasure mean to you?
I think it's something that I enjoy, but I'm not necessarily I'm not forthright in admitting it to others.
I was said to somebody before the recording that watching Jerry Springer is a little bit like watching pornography without the sex, right? Which is, what do you have if that's the case? A lot of porn
stars on that show.
Yeah, well, but there is a kind of like, this isn't right. It's
definitely not something I'm bringing up at my family dinner.
No. Yeah. And I do think that one thing he said is, look, the kind of scrutiny that we are bringing to ordinary people, we do this all the time with celebrities. Why is this any different? It's weak, but I do think that there is an argument that he is bringing into the sunlight and into the surface base instincts in a way that we need to be reminded of sometimes, maybe. We like to be so pure and we like to pretend like we're not driven by violence and by sex and by gossip and by judgment. And that's just not true.
Yeah.
There is a way in which this show is an uncomfortable mirror. It's a weak argument that Jerry Springer is saying that's what he's doing, but I think that's part of the guilty pleasure here. I think we're being reminded of things that we otherwise hide from view.
Right. I think we're all a little uncomfortable of nuance.
Yeah.
Can this be a mirror for us or something that is enticing to watch? And be exploitative of those folks, but also be a little truth.
I think what it doesn't account for is the feedback loops, right? This is the problem on social media. We gin up negative emotion and everybody gets worked up. Like, there is such a thing as social contagion. And I think Jerry Springer basically is blind to that. I think he sees each episode of his show as a kind of one-off snapshot. And he doesn't think about the lives that it affects afterwards or the way that it might exacerbate qualities that we might otherwise actually want to contain.
Right. Yeah. It never registered to him that all of this violence on his show might lead to people feeling more comfortable being violent in their lives because they see it regularly on the show.
I'm glad you brought up violence. If there's anything that I have a really hard time getting around, it's the normalization of violence. That it was meant to be actual fistfights. Like, it's funny, as we're talking here, I'm trying not to judge Jerry Springer, and I'm having a hard time doing it.
It's hard. It's really hard. Yeah.
I think you're doing a better job of holding space for forgiveness here.
I'm holding space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
we're
you
just
for
gonna
that.
hold some space for everybody. I just feel like nobody's perfect. Everybody has given up a bit of their soul for something.
Yeah.
His happens to be on a very large stage.
Are we overstating how bad it was or how much effect it had? I mean, this is, I think, the hard thing to sort of make sense of now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the Roman Colosseum. It's P.T. Barnum with the freak show. It's all of those things that we flock to as human beings.
What about the idea that your show and shows like it contributes to a coarsening of our culture and of what we expect of each other?
If people say that, I disagree. Celebrity culture came first. Ever since I've been a kid, there were magazines about these celebrities, who's sleeping with whom, who's doing what. You cannot say, we permit these stories about famous people, but you're not allowed to have it on television about poor people. That is such hypocrisy that I don't think then I give a serious answer to it.
I do think it is important that we acknowledge our guilty pleasures. Whether he went about it the right way or in a responsible way, to have our uncomfortable instincts put on display and our social instincts put on display, it shows us something that maybe we don't want to see, but we got to be reminded of. All right, so what do you got for number 5?
Okay, I have the King of Queen playing off of your Aretha Franklin episode.
Oh, where Maddie said the
Queen of Kings.
Queen of Kings. King of Queen.
He's the King of Queen because he beat Oprah. This is 1998. Let me set this stage.
Yes.
Peak Oprah. This is when she had those, oh my gosh, they were like camel leather couches.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone who's listening right now, I know you can see those couches.
This is the one that Tom Cruise jumped on?
Yes, he jumped all over that couch. But yes, he...
Tom, no feet on the couch.
Specifically for several weeks in the spring and summer of 1998, Jerry Springer Show overtook the Oprah Winfrey Show, became the highest rated daytime TV show in America. To overtake the Oprah Winfrey Show in 1998, that is a big deal.
Oh, she had been like number 1 for 9 years running or something?
Yeah.
I mean, her was the queen.
You couldn't play with it. I was on all of her diets. I'm 15 years old, just chubby John. After school at 4 p.m., I'm sitting down and I've got Oprah on, and I think I will run on, and her theme song. And I would just be like, yeah, tell me, Oprah, how do I fix my life?
Yeah, she owned culture.
Yeah, she had me in her clutches. And he took her out. That is a big deal. We're looking at peak Jerry Springer. I don't think anyone else could have taken her out in daytime TV.
Yeah. And she had not nice things to say, unsurprisingly.
She read him down dirty, talking about how she almost left daytime television because of how awful the environment was because of him.
He was driving.
And then he comes back.
Right? Did she say she was almost driven out because it's become too tawdry?
Oh, she'd talk about it. She'd sit down in the audience on that step and she'd have the microphone and she'd talk to us and be like, listen, everyone, it's a real rough world out there at daytime TV. Yeah. And she was like, and she's like, I almost left. Wow. And we'll be right back. Because of Jerry Springer. But she was so upset by it. And she's talking mad smack about him. And then he comes up and just whips her butt for a spring and summer in 1998, which, I mean, is kind of punk rock.
All right, so let's recap. So, number 1, I said Mayor Before Mayhem. Number 2, you said Built for Chaos, Trained for Order. Then you said number 3, you said Bloom Where You're Planted. And number 4, Guilty Pleasure. And then maybe he brought some things to the light. And number 5, King of Queen. So those are our 5 things we love about. We found 5 things to love about.
We found it. You know what? That was not easy.
That was not easy.
Gentle listeners, we did it. That was hard.
Okay, let's take a break.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Get this. Adults with financial literacy skills have 82% more wealth than those who don't. From swimming lessons to piano classes, us parents invest in so many things to enrich our kids' lives. But are we investing in their future financial success? With Greenlight, you can teach your kids financial literacy skills like earning, saving, and investing. And this investment costs less than that after-school treat. Start prioritizing their financial education and future today with a risk-free trial at greenlight.com/Wondery. Greenlight.com/Wondery.
Category 3, One Love. In this category, we each choose one word or phrase that characterizes Jerry Springer's loving relationships. First, we will review the family life data. So he was married to a woman named Mickey Velton. They got married in 1973. Jerry was 29. His daughter was born in 1976. Jerry was 32 when she was born. She was born with some disabilities. That was his only child. One thing that's sort of interesting is that there are reports that he and Mickey divorced. They never actually finalized the divorce. So he ended up being married to Mickey all the way up until 2023, so 50 years, essentially. He is surprisingly private. We know very little about Jerry Springer's interpersonal life. There is the Kentucky brothel incident. He was also busted for having a threesome.
I saw that.
With the guests.
Yeah.
With some guests of Jerry Springer, a mom and stepmother, porn actresses, as I recall.
Yes.
So I'm a little bit proud of my one love word. I wrote incognito browser. Okay, so all right. So I have no data on this other than the two incidents. I have my suspicions. We know almost too little. There are two sex scandals that we can point to, but I suspect as his wealth grew, I just am of the opinion that he took bigger and bigger steps to cover up his sex life behind the scene. Yeah.
It was going on.
Yeah. And incognito browser, this is when you don't want to be tracked, obviously, for your internet history. I think he did not want to be tracked.
It's so good. I'm so jealous.
Thank you. I think it kind of says everything I needed to say. So that's my one word love, incognito browser.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Darn, mine feels a bit like a bit of a cop-out, but mine's similar in that I just went, meh.
Yeah.
It just kind of feels like, okay, I know he was married.
Well, this is if you have the search history. It's a little meh. There's not a lot to say.
He's kind of meh in terms of guess they were together, but not really. And we know that there was stuff going on.
There must have been. I bet he was turned on by his show at times. I mean, I think that there's enough porn stars coming on the show and there's enough sex scandals and scenarios. He's engaging with that content every day and asking questions about it.
Yeah.
I suspect it turned him on. Kind of had to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And to my knowledge, or what I'm hoping is that it was all consensual. There was nothing, Bill Cosby-esque about it.
We know nothing.
We know nothing. So
I did.
But it's sad that I have to bring that up to say, like, hey, maybe it was consensual.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. But he did have that power. I do think that being on television, what is the Kissinger quote, that power is the great aphrodisiac? I did read one article from a producer in the late 90s, I think before a sex scandal, who was talking about part of the job was getting Jerry laid, setting up opportunities for him. I just suspect that was part of the story. And it's also sort of important. He may have some friends. We don't hear a lot about him. I think he is more politician than TV show host in a way. He is really unknowable and kind of hiding behind a veil.
You didn't hear about like Willard Scott saying, I had my friend Jerry over for dinner.
Right. Nobody, and I think people are afraid to associate with him.
Yeah,
on some
I feel
level,
like there was
right?
a fear of saying, I'm friends with this person. It would muddy their persona.
And it looks kind of lonely.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had to just offer an impression based on the research and based on the data, look kind of lonely. So there's so little to say here. It's mostly hidden behind an incognito browser. We just don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think that's the best way to describe it. Incognito browser.
Thank you. All right, let's move on. Category 4, net worth. In this category, we will write down our numbers ahead of time and discuss our reasoning. We'll then look up the net worth number in real time to see who's closest. And finally, we'll place this person on the Famous and Gravy net worth leaderboard. This is one of those incidents where we talked about it before. We both independently stumbled upon the number because people kind of made some noise of it. So let's go ahead and just do the reveal and see if we remembered the correct number. All right. So John Watts wrote down 60 million.
Michael Osborne wrote down 60 million.
Let's just verify. The actual net worth of Jerry Springer is 60 million. That's a really high number, John.
It's a really high number.
Is it a little too high?
It feels too high.
It feels too high.
For what he did.
Had it been 5 million, Would we have had a different analysis of the Jerry Springer story?
I think that's why we found out about it, because in our research, everyone was like, look how much money he made off of these people, in this exploitation. It is sickening to think how much he made off of the show. I think sickening might be a bit of
Well, I don't know. I mean, it definitely leaves me feeling even ickier about him.
Icky about it, yeah.
I mean, Jerry Springer leaves you feeling icky. Part of me saw this number, and the thought that came to my mind was a thought that actually recurs every now and then on Famous and Gravy, which is maybe life is just a big joke. Like, I am looking for purpose and meaning and a spiritual awakening and an upward staircase, and maybe there is a higher power or a higher purpose in this universe. Or maybe it's all a big cosmic joke.
Yeah.
And if Jerry Springer died with $60 million, this is an argument that it's all a big joke, man.
For all of the work that one does individually to try to be a good person, to look for the good in others, to look for spiritual growth in difficult times, then looking at this number and you're like, well, what the am I doing? I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
What am I?
Well, I'm a sucker.
Wasting my time.
Well, yeah.
He looked for the worst in people and made $60 million.
100%. All right.
So
well, let's
annoying.
place it. It is annoying. Let's place him on the Famous and Gravy Network.
Oh, my
leaderboard.
favorite part.
Okay. So with 60 million, he is in a 4-way tie. This puts him in the top 30th percentile. The other people at the dinner table, this is great. Mary Tyler Moore, Olivia Newton-John, and Johnny Cash. They are also at the $60 million net worth dinner table.
Wow.
What a dinner.
I don't want to sit at that dinner.
I don't think anybody does. Jerry Springer just strolled in with $60 million.
That would be my fucking luck if somebody was like, who would you have dinner with in heaven? And they'd be like, well, John, here's your seat. And I'd be like, oh,
just
great.
See Mary Tyler Moore and Olivia Newton-John like making faces at each other.
Oh, God. Passing notes. They'd be passing notes.
And Johnny Cash goes back on the pills.
Johnny's just passed out. He's just back on the horse.
I'm going to sit this one out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jerry Springer, 60 million. All right. Category 5, Little Lebowski Urban Achievers.
They're the Little Lebowski Urban Achievers.
Yeah, the Achievers.
Yes, and proud we are of all of them.
In this category, we each choose a trophy, an award, a cameo, an impersonation, or some other form of a hat tip that shows a different side of this person. What did you have here?
For me, it was Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me.
This is the Austin Powers sequel?
Yes.
I came across this one. And this is the moment where Scott and Dr. Evil are trying to reconcile.
Yes.
And they go on the Jerry Springer show.
Okay, let's bring out Scott's father, Dr. Evil.
Why'd you run out on me?
Because you're not quite evil enough. Well, it's true. You're the Diet Coke of evil. Just 1 calorie, not evil enough.
One thing I love about this one is my favorite moment in the very first Austin Powers is the group therapy led by Carrie Fisher, where Dr. Evil gets up and tells his life story. I think that monologue is just pure genius. This feels like a natural sequel to that. Like, we didn't sort it out in group therapy. Let's go on Jerry Springer.
Which was what people thought was going to happen when they went on. In this documentary that's out on Netflix about the show, people really thought they were going to go on Jerry Springer
and get closure.
And get help.
Yeah, and get help.
From Jerry.
Yeah.
And get closure about their issue. And that really was what people thought was going to happen.
You know, it's easy to look at that and say, what the hell are you thinking? At the same time, I do think that there is a sort of human instinct towards confession. Let me say this. I have done some personal inventory as a result of recovery. Mm-hmm. And when I've brought things that I did not want brought out into the sunlight and said them out loud and shared them with another person, I have felt a certain freedom. And so I could understand people wanting to go on Jerry Springer to spill their guts to sort of absolve themselves somehow. Yeah. And I think this is before, I don't know, therapy had been normalized, before we had this whole language of therapy that we do now where we talk about our triggers and our trauma.
You're right.
You know?
We didn't know about
We didn't know how to do this. And so there is a sort of honest impulse, perhaps. I think that's the nicer interpretation. I think more likely people just wanted to be on TV.
I think they wanted to be on TV, and there was a sense of, if they didn't think they were going to get help, they thought, I'm going to get this all out in the open. I'm going to tell the whole world how I was wronged, or how I'm hilarious and awesome, for wronging someone, and it's going to be out there, and that is freeing. It is freeing to admit.
And it may have even been for some of the people on the Jerry Springer show.
Yeah.
I don't know. We know about the stories where it went south, but we don't know as many of the stories where maybe hey, that was good. I feel good.
Yeah.
I got it out.
Yeah. But it's sort of, the
hard to picture.
Austin Powers just takes exactly what happens on the show and puts it in the movie. But it's like even, it's a send up because they're dealing with their own family issues as if they were going to receive help. But it turns into just a violent brawl.
I went in a slightly different direction for this category. So did you come across this 2008 Northwestern commencement speech? He gives a commencement speech to the Northwestern Law School, and there was controversy around this. There were plenty of graduating law school students who said, we do not want you to come and talk to us. But he did. Now, unfortunately, there's not audio available, but I'm going to read a little bit from the transcript. Think of the ethical issues you will have to deal with. Will you work for a corporate client who is perhaps polluting? Will you walk into your senior partner's office after having been asked to prepare a memorandum in support of this client's case and say, I'm sorry, I'll have to leave and find another place to work, and then explain to your family why there won't be a paycheck coming in this month? I'm not suggesting that these moral dilemmas don't have answers, but what I am saying is that whatever you plan to do with this diploma, the ethical questions will never stop. Welcome to life. Unavoidably, you will all join me on this witness stand of conscience, trying your best to figure it out, never perfectly, but hopefully always sincerely. It is perhaps inevitable that we are inclined to always judge others, but let me share this observation. I am not superior to the people on my show, and you are not superior to the people you will represent. That is not an insult. It is merely an understanding derived from a life spent on the front lines of human interaction. We are all alike. Some of us just dress better or have more money, or perhaps we were born into better circumstances of parental upbringing, health, brains, and luck. On this great day when we honor your achievement, we might also say thank you to God in full recognition that whatever we achieve in this life is 99% a gift. This is an unbelievably self-aware quote.
Yeah.
And articulate, right? I mean, this is the thing, is that whenever he is talking outside of the show, I'm paying attention to what he has to say.
Oh, he's great.
I'm bought in on what, but that's so weird. You say, well, he's great. And I'm like, yes, but it's Jerry freaking Springer. How can you argue? That's the conflict. That's so,
that's
you
so
see
hard.
This man's soul in here somewhere, and yet $60 million to put a bestiality on TV, right? I mean, it's like, what the f***? It's such a case study in denial.
Yeah, denial. But in the separation that he's created between himself and the show, where he's like, I really believe that I'm doing these things.
Is this what media does, John? Is this what television does to your head? I mean, is this what celebrity does?
Celebrity does. I think you absolutely lose touch with the impact of your work could be, because how would you know? But he, at this point, knew. But I think he always, what I love about him is he's always trying to continue to find the meaning in
order and chaos.
In this order and the chaos. He's always trying to say, like, well, what are we really doing here? And isn't this really shedding a light on people in our humanity and the broad scope? Yes. I think
is he accountable, though? Or maybe a better question is, how should he be accountable? The market should have held him accountable, right? We should have all decided this is disgusting. We're not going to watch it. We didn't. Quite the opposite.
Right.
America decided, we love you. You're better than Oprah.
Yeah.
We'll write the paychecks and keep them coming, Jerry. I mean, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, I've been trying to avoid the word cancel, because I feel like there are people who need to be held accountable in the court of public opinion. But it's not like, for want of effort here, everybody went after this guy and said, what you're doing is despicable. And he said, yeah, it's a silly show, and I wouldn't watch my show either.
I do my show, and look, I've always said it's a stupid show, and I've had a wonderful life because of it and all of that, but I've never for a second thought that it's important. It's trivial, it's chewing gum, and I recognize that, once you do something that's significant in life, all this other stuff is just a way to eat.
I guess I just don't know what to make of it now. Like, is he a bad person?
I really don't know that we can just say that he's a bad person. I think that he has so much self-awareness.
Yeah.
But I think he is someone who became addicted to his lifestyle and couldn't let go of that paycheck to
but what else was he going to do, too? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know? I mean,
What does Jerry Springer do after the Jerry Springer Show except his podcast? You know?
Which he did.
Yeah, that is pretty much what any celebrity would do. But I think it's just so hard to just say, he was a terrible person.
No, I agree. But I do think it's funny, like, as we're talking, I feel that temptation to render a judgment on some level.
But this goes back to my idea is like, who among us hasn't sold their soul a little bit for something on a less grand scale?
I think the counter to that, though, is that once it's pointed out to you that this is perhaps causing harm, that's what he doesn't see. That's the denial. Or maybe it's not causing as much harm as we think. I don't know. What is the harm, I guess?
Yeah, I think the harm is that he made so much money off of the backs of these people who were not coming from stable backgrounds.
Yeah, welcome to America.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Hello, Amazon, Disney.
Seriously. I mean, yes.
Like, yeah, it's tale as old as time. What is
we just happen to know more about this.
It just happened to be so illustrative. It was on a stage. There was no incognito mode. There was just a full browser.
There was full browser history.
Yeah, full browser history. Gosh, look at us. We're so dark today.
It's so cynical. It's hard not to.
It's so cynical. It's hard. Everyone, the year of our Lord 2025, thinking about Jerry Springer, I do think just listening to what you've read, it's telling me that he's still in there.
Yeah, that's what I got out of that quote too. He's still in there somewhere. Let's take another break.
Mochi Health is here to help you start your weight loss journey with caring, personalized support. Meet one-on-one with board-certified obesity doctors and registered dietitians who truly listen and understand your unique needs. Eligible patients can access affordable GLP-1 medications delivered right to their door each month. No insurance? No problem. Mochi Health accepts FSA and HSA, making care accessible and affordable. And with 24/7 customer service, you'll never feel alone on your path to better health. Get started with Mochi Health today. Take the free quiz at joinmochi.com and use code AUDIO40 at checkout for $40 off your first month of membership. That's joinmochi.com with promo code AUDIO40.
Okay, category 6, words to live by. In this category, we each choose a quote. These are either words that came out of this person's mouth or was said about them. What did you have for this category?
It was an interview with the Chicago Tribune 2004. My show is silly, but the issues are real. Poverty is real. Racism is real. Addiction is real. We're just the loud version. And
it's really good.
Again, goes back to he's still in there and he's still trying to make sense of what he's doing.
It's not untrue, too.
Well, there are arguments about whether the show actually was real. That was produced within an inch of its life. These people were directed.
Yes, I think that's true. And I think it is amplifying and overstating a lot of gossipy drama, a lot of perversions, if you want to use that term, overstating probably how violent the world is overall, how quick we are to throw a punch. But is it really? I don't know. I see the Jerry Springer Show and I look around America and I'm like, that's a version of America that is absolutely out there that I'm not seeing on another program.
Sure. Yeah, it was a slice of life for sure. And I think if I could be so bold to change it myself, I would say, I love that he says, my show is silly. Like he says, he always threw it away. But the issues are real. I would also just say, these people are real. Poverty is real. Racism is real. Addiction is real. We're allowed very maybe disgusting version of it, but we're putting it out there for the world and everyone is interested in learning or hearing about it. It kind of sums it all up for me and what he thought he was doing.
Yeah, it gets at his self-narrative and his rationalization.
Yeah. And I think that was probably what got him up in the morning. I'm going to go tell some real stories today.
Yeah. All right. For mine, I've been virtually everything you can't respect. A lawyer, a mayor, a major market news anchor, and a talk show host. Pray for me. If I get to heaven, we're all going. The reason I went there, it kind of is to your point about self-awareness. If I get to heaven, we're all going. This man's a cynic. But he's even entertaining the possibility that he might get to heaven. If I get to heaven, we're all going. I think he sees hope in himself.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. I don't even know if he was religious or thought that it was real. You know, it could be just his joke. He
doesn't talk much about it, that's for sure.
But he's very tongue-in-cheek about knowing that he's a bit of a scumbag for having this show.
I think that's a good segue into the next category, Category 7, Man in the Mirror. This category is fairly simple. Did this person like their reflection, yes or no? This is not about beauty, but rather a question of self-confidence versus self-judgment. I'm a hard no on this one.
I think it was a constant battle of him trying to prop himself up to say, I'm okay. I'm doing okay.
This man is a case study in denial and rationalization.
Yeah.
He has to face this every day.
The flip-flopping the show's trash and silly, but actually we're doing something here.
Yeah.
You know, that whole thing is very much a politician's
There's kind of nothing to say here.
Yeah. I can't imagine that he really felt like in 2018, when the show finally was canceled with no fanfare.
Died with a whimper.
Yeah, and rightly so. I think a show like that shouldn't have been celebrated.
I think it became irrelevant in the age of social media. I don't think we needed Jerry Springer once we
had the Real Housewives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We also have TikTok and Facebook.
Yeah, I can get all the cake maker drama. They have their own channels.
Yeah, exactly.
On YouTube. Yeah.
He moved into a world of irrelevance.
They cut out the middleman.
Yeah, exactly.
Good job, America.
Good job. All right. Category 8, cocktail, coffee, or cannabis. This is where we ask which one would we most want to do with our dead celebrity.
I thought it would be really fun to go down to a midtown Chicago bar on a snowy, cold evening, get a Moscow Mule.
Yes, sir.
Cocktail.
Now you're talking.
And unpack some
I had the same thing. I wanted to go down to the Chili Parlor and get Mad Dog margaritas. Shout out to Guy Clark Jr.
Yeah, the Chili Parlor.
Truth serum. I'm looking for truth serum.
I want
here.
truth serum.
I think we went to the same place. I need to get at the corruption.
Give it to me straight, Jerry.
Yeah,
what's going on?
This hurts, right? This has to hurt.
This had to kind of feel like shit after a while, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, have you ever met like a real politician?
Not in person, no.
They're scary. Because they convince you they're good people when they're not. They have this Jedi mind trick quality, the good ones, where they beam in front of you with positive energy and possibility, and you're won over by them, and we forgive everything.
They walk into the room veneers first.
Totally.
They're just like, look at this smile.
But anytime the tractor beam starts to go in towards reality, it gets just like barely deflected off, but you think you got in there. Yeah. I don't know how many drinks it would take
to get a real answer. That's a politician.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I do think that there is, in his mind, the idea of a good person in there somewhere. Whether or not I would ever be able to get him drunk enough to actually unlock that good person, I wonder.
Yeah, I think it would take a couple of mules.
Mm-hmm.
However, the fun part about it would be I think he was probably a great conversationalist.
Yes.
He's hilarious. He's a funny guy.
He is a funny guy.
Yeah.
He's very charming.
He's perfect for a boozy chat. And you could throw some softballs. What are some favorite crazy show moments?
Yeah.
Although he always seemed to, whenever he was asked about things, he always seemed to have like no memory of people on a show.
It's a kind of hard show to remember. You kind of don't want to remember it.
Yeah. And maybe it was intentional forgetting.
Do you think that the worldview here it's a big joke, though? I mean, I kind of teased that idea earlier, John, that ultimately at his core, is he a cynic? Is he a nihilist? Does he believe there is no higher purpose or calling? If that's the case, that would be sort of surprising by somebody who at one point in time was absolutely an idealist.
How do you go from that idealistic beginning to this? What changed? What broke him? I don't know.
I mean, if anything, celebrity, money and power.
Yeah. 3 ways.
Yeah.
In a hotel room.
Sure. No, that'll break anybody.
That'll break anybody. The allure of it all.
In more ways than one. That'll break you.
I think money.
I wish I had a better answer than that.
There's also a part of me that thinks of him as maybe he was a really nice guy and he got tangled up in the machine of this TV show.
Yeah.
This producer who sounded like a real bear of a person.
Yeah.
And the other producers were just kind of pointing where to stand and what to do. And he just was kind of like, all right, well, okay. Yeah. And I think there was an element of him getting just sort of drawn into the machine of television, especially when they were starting to really gain traction with that really awful, violent programming.
You wonder if he was able to successfully sequester off Jerry Springer the product from Jerry Springer the human. I think we've arrived. The final category, the Vanderbeek, named after James Vanderbeek, who famously said in Varsity Blues,
I don't want your life.
In that Varsity Blues scene, James makes a judgment that he does not want a certain kind of life based on a single characteristic. So here, John and I will form a rebuttal to anyone skeptical of how Jerry Springer lived. This is a hard one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, we've been like the whole conversation has felt like I've had to caveat everything. Every time I want to pay the man a compliment, like I feel this like gravitational pull back to, yeah, but this is
so compromised and wrapped up in a lot of, I think, really horrible things. Yeah.
But we have to mount the good faith. I mean,
Correct.
The way I've been thinking about this category is that we need to present the case for the defense. Mm-hmm. So let's start with the counter argument. It's not so hard. The prosecution is going to say, Jerry Springer, you made $60 million exploiting people. You had values that you clearly cared about, as is evidenced from the early part of your life, and you sold those values out for a very large paycheck so that you could browse the world in incognito mode, and you have left no significant contribution. That's a compelling case from the prosecution, so we've got to respond to that. You said something to me before the recording about there's this idea maybe of freedom of expression. This kind of goes back to your thing number 3 of moving the goalposts. What is the harm here? I think he did exploit people, and I think he did normalize violence. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. We watch football. Football's violent.
Right.
We watch a lot of violence on TV.
Lots of violence on TV.
And I think to go back to my thing number 1 about him being child of Holocaust survivors and seeing his political heroes get assassinated in the 1960s, maybe he had a different relationship to violence, and maybe he didn't think that the fights breaking out on the Jerry Springer show were so bad. Does that sound like bullshit?
No, I think it goes back to that idea that he was just sort of brought up in chaos and tried to, throughout his life, make sense of this and find order, but also seemed to lean into this chaos quite a bit in his life. And I think that, to me, says that there was a level of comfort with all of it.
Yeah, is that what freedom of expression is supposed to do? It's supposed to challenge us to say or show speech, and maybe speech as action. I don't see that as a political act on the Jerry Springer show, but but maybe that impulse is there. And I also think he's behind a lot of the harm.
Yeah, I think he was so encapsulated in his world of celebrity. He was sort of notorious for forgetting who was on the show ever.
Well, and I don't think he's thinking about the cumulative impact.
No.
That I think every episode is its own story, not necessarily every episode is a erosion, a little itty bit of taking away the moral clarity of America.
Jerry Springer was living in the moment, baby.
Yeah.
He was living in the moment.
Yeah,
Come on.
I mean, again, I don't want to forgive it because I think there is harm here.
Right.
But I'm also saying I can understand, and this is, I think, part of the case for the defense, I can understand why he doesn't see that he describes it as silly, not morally repugnant. Right? And that he doesn't actually see the damage to the collective psyche. There's a point to that. It's not actually as easy to see because the stories on there are coming from instincts that we all understand, even if we want to hide them and hide from them.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to one of my 5 things is, I think maybe this was all stuff we tried to pretend didn't exist.
Yeah.
In our lives. And he just put a big megaphone up to it and said, this is real. And I'm going to put it on TV at 3 p.m. He sort of made the unspeakable, not only speakable, but sort of routine.
Yeah.
I think it was
sort of like almost normalized something.
Yes. Yeah. So I think
normalized trash.
Normalized.
I mean, but I don't know. I know I feel an impulse to be judgmental. He at least claims he's not.
Right. Of the people who came to the show.
And maybe we do need to take him on at his word for that. This was the second thing I was thinking about in terms of you at the beginning of the conversation said, I'm looking for a spark, a glimmer of hope here. Mm-hmm. If we want to take him at his word, it's possible he does genuinely believe he's not better than anybody else. Yeah. I mean, I think his public mea culpas, both the Kentucky brothel incident, but also his efforts to not explain away the show necessarily, but at least like cop to it on some level. Yes, I recognize that there's something distasteful here, but moral clarity is just not all that easy to see sometimes.
Right.
Again, I'm trying to present the case for the defense.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. He was aware that the show was silly.
I think he misdiagnosed his own thing. You know what I mean? Like, I think he thought silly, trashy porn without the actual sex, but he didn't actually see that as dangerous.
He may have just seen like, oh, this is escapism for my viewers and nothing else.
Is it dangerous? I mean, that question actually still lingers for me. Is this show actually having an impact? Did it make things worse?
It did for some people. In the documentary, there was a death after a woman appeared on the show with her ex-husband,
right,
and he killed her.
These staged confrontations are actually
ignited something in that man to kill her, and there were data points there, but I think you're right. Like there was a definite lack of seeing the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
In his regard for how much harm this actually could do on the viewers.
I mean, I think the thing I kind of want to believe, and I don't know if it's believable or not, but I kind of want to believe that we actually never got to present Jerry Springer with the most compelling case for why his show was harmful.
Mm-hmm.
If we're looking for a glimmer of hope in this man's soul, it's that he actually thought that he had heard the critique when he had not heard the full critique of the harm. And I asked earlier about accountability and what should accountability look like. His show should have been canceled. And we did the exact opposite. We gave it more money.
Right.
Right. And we wrote bigger paychecks. That's not to absolve him, but there's a part of me that wants to believe, had he actually understood at a deeper level the effect that he was having, and that he was forcing confrontation in the name of entertainment, that had he really seen that in its truth, that maybe he could be saved.
Yeah. I think
it's not the most compelling case, but we have to present the case.
It's a case.
It's a case.
If we're going back to say morality isn't fixed, it drifts.
Yeah.
It was going to happen anyway. And he was just along for the ride. And he was a big clown in that circus, right?
Yeah.
So that's one argument for saying that he wasn't all that bad if you were going to be, his defender.
So I think if we were to summarize the case for the defense and respond to James Vanderbeek here, we would say, number one, that the principle of freedom of expression is actually very important, and that there is not as much moral certainty in social life as we like to pretend. Number two, there was some level of self-awareness and accountability, and that he was shielded from the full truth, perhaps. That's a little hard to see, but there's a case to be made. It's possible.
It's possible.
And then, is there anything else we'd add to that? It's hard to see the upward staircase here.
I want to go for one more.
Okay.
That might be a little... It's a reach, but I think he did. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to caveat it.
Yeah.
Okay. So he
gotta mean it, John.
purports this. I'm standing all 10 toes on this. He purports that this as well in a lot of his comments is he's giving ordinary people with ordinary problems a stage and giving us a slice of life as a viewer.
Every job I've had, I've always been kind of on the side of the disenfranchised, whether it was the civil rights movement, whether it was my politics, whether it was as a talk show host. It's always the little guy versus the establishment. I still hang around with the same people I always hung around with, and I'm not saying it's morally superior to other classes. I'm just saying we're all the same, and I'm very comfortable being there.
But maybe we do actually understand ourselves better for it.
Yes.
Whether we want to look or not.
Whether we have that mirror and we're looking in that mirror, whether we like it or not, it's humanity. It's other people like us.
All right. So thing number 3, gave us a mirror.
Gave us a mirror.
Whether we like it or not. Okay. With that, James Vanderbeek, I'm Jerry Springer, and you want my life. Before we get to the speed round, if you enjoyed this episode of Jerry Springer, if you didn't find it too tawdry, then you've got your phone in your hand, share it with a friend. Send it to somebody who could use what is hopefully a semi-provocative conversation about the life of Jerry Springer. It helps us to grow the show. All right, speed round, plugs for past shows. So, John, if people enjoyed the Jerry Springer episode, What else might they enjoy?
Okay, let's go with another talk show host, Mr. James Lipton.
The exact opposite of Jerry Springer.
The exact opposite.
The smug, self-righteous, holier than thou. I love it. James Lipton, who was also, we should say, a pimp at one point.
No, yes, that's
yes,
right.
He was. He absolutely was. So James Lipton, the host of Inside the Actor Studio, that is episode 91, Studio Insider. I'm going to go with episode 1. Every now and then I plug this. I think Famous and Gravy has been on a learning journey and we've come a long way. But our very first episode was Unapologetic Opulence, Robin Leach. And I think that there's a similar sort of theme of maybe it's all a big joke and why not put these things on TV and let's not take ourselves too seriously. So if you like this episode, I encourage you to listen to Unapologetic Opulence with Robin Leach.
And don't forget about Margaret Thatcher.
And of course, Margaret Thatcher. Here's a little preview for the next episode of Famous and Gravy. He would wear brightly colored cowboy hats and outfits dripping with fringe.
Why don't I know him? I feel like I should know him.
Famous and Gravy listeners, we love hearing from you. If you want to reach out with a comment, question, or to participate in our opening quiz, email us at hello@famousandgravy.com. In our show notes, we include all kinds of links, including to our website and our social channels. Famous and Gravy is created and co-hosted by Amit Kapoor and me, Michael Osborne. Thank you so much to John Watts for guest hosting on this episode. It was produced by Allie Arrazola with original music by Kevin Strang. Thanks, and see you next time. Follow Famous and Gravy on the Wondery app. You can listen to more episodes early and ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Before you go, tell us about yourself by completing a short survey at Wondery.com/survey.